Hello, everyone. This is Matt Orozco, and I'm joined by the always lovely.
Lowell Greenblatt.
Yes, and we are your hosts for another episode of Macabre Monthly, which I lost count. I usually try to check these things before. I think
You
it's
were
115.
I wasn't counting.
Yeah,
I've yet
episode 15,
15
something like that.
ish.
Ish.
Always ish. We're never sure.
Yeah, it's double
Well, you're more
digits.
sure than I am. Yeah.
We're at least double digits, but maybe the first digit isn't a two. I know that much. It's still a one. So we're tracking towards that a eventual milestone of the two being the leading number. But now I'm just bantering for no reason. It is April. Seasonal allergies are killing us all, so we don't really need to worry about killers in horror movies these days because it is literal havoc on our immune systems. But nevertheless, we
Mhm.
persevere. And we've got for this month's topic, we figure the sun's warming, the sinuses are overworked. It's time to talk about slasher films, but not just any
It's always
slasher
fun to
film.
talk.
That's true. There really isn't a bad time to talk about a slasher film. So, but as with the case with these, we always need a reason to celebrate and a reason to make a list. We're not BuzzFeed, so lists don't come so easy to us. And ours are the top five non-franchise slasher films. So, talking about what we think are films that were just so great that they only made one of them, and maybe that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah. This was surprisingly difficult. I mean, because when we're talking about non franchise, I didn't count like one movie and a remake. Like
Yeah.
if there was a remake or and the characters show up in anything else, it doesn't count. And I realized that pared down my choices a lot. So yeah,
Well, now I
this
got to make
should be
sure that I didn't
interesting.
pick any. Yeah, none of mine had a remake associated with them.
You better not, I swear to God. I will fly to the Midwest and I will I don't care. I
You
don't
will
care.
exact your revenge,
Sure.
whatever that looks like.
Just a slasher's revenge.
Yeah,
Well,
some sort of phallic shaped or phallically symbolic murder device, and
I really should have started this riff with an ending in mind, but I didn't.
yeah,
I'm in Florida. I'm sunburned. I've got alcohol in me. I've got coffee to offset that alcohol. I'm coherent. Let's do this.
that's amazing. That is, we're getting you at your absolute peak of existence right now, which is both caffeinated and inebriated in Florida. So,
Yeah. I'd like to think more caffeinated than inebriated because I am a professional,
yes.
but you be the judge, America.
Yeah, you let us know on the hotlines are open. They're not. I don't know if you have our phone numbers, erase them. It's probably wrong
Yeah,
anyway.
it's a 1-900 number. Totally legit.
Call me now. Call us now for your free horror reading. Um, those bring me back. Well, we're going to talk about top five non-franchise slasher movies, which actually has a nice little ring to it. But before we go down those rabbit holes, Lowell, how you been? What's new in your world?
Excuse me. I'm pretty good. I've been watching some horror. Started virtual D&D, which I've never done
Ah,
before virtually. So we'll see how it goes, but it's going pretty good so far, or well so far. Yeah, and I went to the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market a few weeks ago, which
nice.
is a big punk rock horror flea market with local vendors in Trenton, New Jersey, which is literally what the title says. Although sometimes they have it in more northern Jersey, and I kind of prefer to go to that one because it's closer to where I am. And I've been to the one in Trenton three times maybe, and I think it's the farthest I will drive to go to one of these, and it's totally worth it. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of near Pennsylvania and living in Metro New York. I think that's my ceiling or
Yeah.
wall or limit or whatever. But it was cool. Got a bunch of stuff. Got more pins and stickers, and I, as always, don't know where to put them. But got some cool prints and met some cool people. So yeah. How
Yeah,
about
that sounds like
yourself?
a win. I mean, I have
Yeah.
actually been to Trenton a few times, and it was the only time where someone told me you probably shouldn't leave your hotel after a certain period of time. And I was like, okay, like I'll take that advice, I guess. Um, but interestingly enough, actually also went to a punk rock flea market, albeit here in it's in Akron, so it's about 45 minutes away from me, and that was last weekend. Um, yeah, it was pretty punk, I guess. I don't know what the qualifications to be punk nowadays, but there was a lot of really interesting vendors, a little bit of horror stuff, jean jackets
That's
and studded,
basically it. Yeah, a Bad Brains patch or two, you know. Yeah,
couple op
it's a
ivy, big op ivy ones on someone's back on a Levi denim tuxedo top.
did pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow.
And that's my ska joke tonight, folks. Wee.
Oh, the hits keep coming, unlike the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. But
You know, I saw them the year before COVID, and I saw them open for the Bouncing Souls. It was great, and then after COVID, they immediately broke up, and I'm like, oh.
but
So,
you
but
also saw the last show the Bosstones would ever play. So
one of them,
somewhere out there, somewhere is someone is very jealous. That's all I know.
somewhere, I suppose, or someday, I suppose, whatever it is. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm seeing the Interrupters next month, so who am I to talk? I love
Yeah,
them.
well, yeah, they're great. And listen, Scott never found the audience it should have. It found an audience for a moment, but then people forgot about it because pop punk came around. Um, that was
Although
great.
having grown up on Long Island, there was a ska and pop punk scene happening at the time, and it was normal to go to or usual to go to Saturday or Sunday matinees, see the Pie Tasters, High School Football Heroes. So while everyone's making fun of ska, it's thriving on Long Island. So yeah, I had a jean jacket with a lot of pins that did not keep me warm.
And did you have any Doc Martens?
I did not because I
Okay.
wanted to be comfortable, sneakers all
Yes.
the way.
Yeah,
But
you can't really skank in Doc Martens, although people try. People do try.
yeah, yeah, God bless them. And
Yeah.
isn't it funny how you go to one of these punk rock flea markets or a con or whatever, and you go with a budget, but when you walk out, it's like you have blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Like you've whipped out the Venmo so many times. You just see things like, yep, I need that, I need that, I need that, and it's a second mortgage on your house all of a sudden.
No, it really is like it's kind of like blacking out when you drink too much. You know, you kind of get into this haze. Like my usual stymie to prevent myself from spending more than I want to is to just take out cash and then say, "Oh, so this is my spending funds." But then all of a sudden you see these little stickers that says, we have Square." And I'm like, "You sons of bitches." And next thing you know, you walk out with shit like this. Little tiny clay tall men that someone is selling, which could not be passed up, which came from actually Cinema Wasteland, which is a little
Oh,
event they do out here in Strongsville, Ohio, um, which is a lot
cool.
of fun. Like small con vibes and energy. So like, you know, think of like a literal Best Western with a small showroom, but everyone's been going to this convention just seems like for years and years. And so there's a pretty tight knit community. Um, there is no safe space for the celebrities, so they're just kind of left to mingle with the rest of us, which is kind of cool. Led to some interesting,
With us normies, yeah.
yeah, with us normal folk. But yeah, it was pretty good time overall. Also been watching quite a few horror movies, although not as many recent ones. Mostly some older ones. But I'm curious to know, what have you been watching?
Well, I watched the Child's Play documentary, Living with Chucky, and then I interviewed Kira Elise Gardner, the editor, director, the everything. She pretty much did it all for this, and that was cool. She's cool. I always feel like I'm just sort of stumbling over my words whenever I speak to people, even on Zoom. Like people, not professionals like us, but people who've made feature length films and stuff that I like. I'm still like, I can't believe I'm talking to you right now. Who let this happen? Do you know who I am? I'm me. I'm just me, and you're you. Of course, I don't say these things because I'm not insane.
It's all up
But it
here.
was cool. Yeah, all up here. It's cool. Her dad is Tony Gardner, a famous special effects guy. Google him; he is incredible, and he started with the franchise on Seed of Chucky, So she's sort of been following the franchise and even working on a few entries since then. So she decided to make the definitive Child's Play documentary. Although maybe I wouldn't say definitive, because it's not like one of these 9-hour beasts like Crystal Lake Memories or Never Sleep Again. It's kind of like a personal, informative home movie, um, where she doesn't inject herself into it as much as I thought she would and was kind of expecting. It's more like, soup to nuts. Like it of course covers the original Child's Play and goes right up until the show starts. So it's cool. It's on Screenbox and it's out on Blu-ray now.
Oh,
So I'll have to
nice.
pick a copy of that.
I don't have
And I
Screenbox, so
thought,
I've been waiting for a different
do
way
you
to
have
view it.
Screenbox now?
I don't.
Okay. I feel like Screenbox is just daring me to get it like week after week, like exclusively on Screenbox, and like,
They're
and it's
trying to
just
fill
like,
the void that Shudder hasn't left yet, but might leave if AMC continues
don't
axing shit.
don't
I'm
you
not putting it
say
out there. I'm
don't
just saying
you bite your, well, it's out there. It's it's out there
Pandora's
like the
out of the
rug.
box, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But we love Shudder, and we
Yes.
would really like to see AMC stop messing that up. Because
Yeah.
come on, you I know you lost The Walking Dead. You're not making up with it with the Creepshow TV show. I'm sorry. If you love
No.
it, good for you. But anyway, and what was I saying? Renfield. Did you see
Yeah.
Renfield yet?
No. I haven't seen Renfield yet. I hope to catch it while it's still in theaters, but I am such a Luddite when it comes to seeing things in theaters when they're supposed to. It takes more than it should to get me to the theaters these days.
That's fair. I even thought maybe I would wait till VOD, but it's like a major horror release with Nicolas Cage, and I'm like, let me go. And my wife loves like the Dracula, like the book, um, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Of course, we saw the 30th anniversary in theaters, so we thought, yeah, let's go. And I have to say, Nicolas Cage. Oh, it's a kitty. Hi, kitty.
Couldn't stay away.
Uh, um, I don't know if we need to have the Nicolas Cage as one of the best on-screen portrayals of Dracula talk yet. I don't know if we're there. He's definitely a supporting character. It is not the Nicolas Cage show, but he devours every single scene that he's in, just gobbles it up. The stuff with him absolutely works, but there's like a plot or subplot. I don't even know what it is, but it's about like a crime family in New Orleans, and Aquafina's a cop trying to take him down, and Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult, does a really good job, sort of gets in the way. But it's like I never cared about any of that. And like just get me back to Dracula, get me time with Renfield, even though Ben Schwartz and Shohreh Aghdashloo are the mother son in the crime family, and they're fine. It was just kind of like, why this story, or why this element grafted onto the story of someone
Just
trying to leave a
distraction.
toxic relationship? Yeah, so I mean, definitely watch it. If you don't get to the theater, not the worst thing in the world, but oh my god, the gore in this! Don't let anybody ruin anything for you, because there were moments I was like when you get me to make my eyes go this wide, like you've really achieved something. But I was just like, shit, did that? Did wow, yeah. So
That's what I've heard, is that it's got like it's far more bloody and violent than I think anyone would have thought it was going to be, which is
oh yeah,
interesting. Like I'm here for that for sure.
yeah. It's gory and goopy and gross. It's just a little thin in some areas, but everyone's game. And just, man, Nicolas Cage's Dracula. It's like everything you knew it was gonna be, but still seeing it is just wonderful. So
I mean,
I
we
would say
that sounds like
definitely.
an idea for a list we could do one point is best Dracula performances.
Oh man, we'd have to watch so many Dracula movies. I mean, yes, there are some great Dracula movies, but I mean
And
that's
you
there's a
don't want to
lot of
watch 2000's masterpiece, Dracula 2000?
bitch. I saw it in theaters. Don't
Yes,
talk to me
yes, I did.
about 2000. So, in fact, my wife was going through a Dracula phase where she wanted to see a bunch of Dracula films because she really just knew the book and Brand, the Francis Ford Coppola, and she hadn't seen the original from 31. So she's like, let me see about like Dracula and like other, other mediums like books, movies, TV shows, stuff like that. And she's like, what's Dracula 2000? And I'm like, speaking of movies to watch on 420, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
like, and I
that maybe
told,
Dracula Untold would be great. Bucket, I don't care.
I
Let's smoke it and
forgot about
watch.
Dracula Untold. Jesus Christ. Why does Universal not know what to do with their monsters? Like, what? That's a topic for another day, but
Yeah.
dear God. Um, anyway, Renfield, not bad. What have you seen?
I've been playing quite a bit of catch up. So I just watched Men from 2022 because I was in a hotel
Mhm.
for work and they had a free showtime. So I was like, fuck this. I haven't watched it yet. So now's a perfect time to watch it. And I totally hear the very valid criticism that about Men, about the movie. But I have to say, holy shit, is that one hell of a third act. So much
Yeah,
so that it actually makes all of the criticism about the film to me totally irrelevant, except for the fact that if you're watching this movie expecting it to be a really strong thematic representation of misogyny and the patriarchy, I would encourage you to try and find better sources for that kind of discourse because I just don't think that Alex Garland nor this particular film, none of it to me gives the impression that it's trying to teach anything, or even if it's trying to do that, maybe in a very superficial way. But
like
visually,
it's not. I don't think it knows it's saying anything new, but
yeah,
he is saying it his own way.
yeah, he's
Continue.
like, look at this, look, I care too. Like, I understand that criticism, but at the same time, if I divorce myself from that opinion and just say I'm really watching this as a horror movie and not as like a social commentary, it's a pretty solid horror movie, and it definitely gives. Yeah, I was not expecting anything that what I saw, and I don't think I will ever see anything like that again, because that is some wild shit that happens at the end.
Yeah,
I
I
kind
won't
of love
spoil
that
it.
movie.
I won't spoil it here, but like I I will talk about the end at another time because I'm great effects, but I'm also kind of left with what?
Why? Yeah, no, it makes no
Well,
sense.
but like it. Well, no, but here's the thing. I feel like it would like if I'm so close to getting it. I don't get it. I admit that, but it feels like it is there. It doesn't just feel like I'm an artist and I'm going to bukkake all over this with my beliefs. It's like I feel like there is a there there. I just need to get there. But
I think you're giving it a lot more credit. I think it actually is missing the there, which is why that ending is so jarring. And it's like this isn't a really well thought out idea, but there's some really good ideas in it. So let's use those good ideas. And I think a lot of that's up to the director's interpretation. I don't know the original source material well at all, so I don't know how much of this was. I think it was
isn't it
book, right?
original? I thought it was an original. Hold on. Yeah,
Now we have
IMDb.
now I
I
have
thought
to fact check, but
original.
I don't know. You'll check it while I'm
All
thinking.
right,
But
no, he wrote,
he
written
wrote
and
it.
directed by Alex Garland.
Well, in that case, that makes perfect sense then, because I don't think there is a like. I think the attempt to be deep here is very shallow, which is why none of the thematic stuff really lands. But what does land is an amazing sense of dread and paranoia that leads up to
Yeah,
a very visceral like ending, which is has to be seen to be believed.
yeah. I mean, it's so weird because for most of it, I'm like, I'm with it, and I kind of get what he's doing. And then we get to that ending, which is like really like visually astonishing, and what the hell, but also what the hell?
Yeah, why?
For
Like
me.
what
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense, but I don't but I think that that to me is part of the charm is that I don't actually want it to make sense because I think that there's no way that based on what came before it that any of this lines up in a meaningful way. So let's just go with I had this really crazy idea and it just keeps happening over and over in perpetuity until the film ends. I'm like, okay, let's go with that.
Yeah, let's
Um,
go do it.
so I think I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And I'm kind of I wish I would have saw it sooner because it probably would have ended up on my best of 2022 list. But that aside, I did see a couple of newer releases, although these were by way of Macabre Daily, which was Malum, which I thoroughly
Oh,
enjoyed. Thoroughly.
I do want to see that. I don't know why he remade Last Shift, but I'm very curious to find out.
Well, there's an
You
amazing
talked to him, didn't
review.
you?
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
amazing interview that he's a super generous guy, Anthony DeBlasi, and he did a couple of interviews with us, which you can go to Macabre Daily and check out. But I think the best way to put it against Last Shift, it's like looking at the same movie with different lenses. There's a lot of commonalities, but there's also enough difference that it actually does kind of feel like a complement to Last Shift rather than a replacement of, because they are,
Okay.
they narratively similar, tonally different. And the visual effects in Malum are pretty outstanding. They're done by the same group, Russell Effects, that did the Hellraiser reboot.
Oh,
So
nice.
very similar kind of aesthetic, kind of that very leathery, latexy kind of shiny, gross. But I think that's the part I love the most about it is it just gets totally off the wall. It's a literal descent into hell, and I think that I love that kind of shit. In fact, if you're going to double feature it, I would absolutely program it alongside The Void, which has a very similar tone. Um,
Interesting. I heard it would make if you watch them together, it would be an interesting double feature. The Last Shift and Malum.
I think they are. I mean, I watched Last Shift before Malum just to kind of refresh my memory, and I think that there's enough similarities in the story beats. We're like, oh, okay, I could see that, but it's almost an expansion as well. So they do make a good double feature because it's kind of they're close enough to be. If you didn't know they were related, you'd probably guess at it, but you wouldn't be for sure assured by it. Um, and then recently saw The Tank, which comes out on Friday.
Oh,
Quite good, you know.
I think
It's definitely like a straight up creature feature.
mhm. It's a family finds like a tank in the ground in their backyard, and there's something in it,
Yeah, I mean
more
they
or less.
essentially inherit this coastal property where a tank, an old water tank's there, and they because I know nothing about owning property, let alone owning coastal property. So I'll take the story for granted in saying that it's right that if you live near on a massive cliff, access to water is probably really difficult. So you might have to have some sort of well or tank that you keep water in. So that makes complete sense from that regard. But yeah, as these horror movie setups go, family shows up, goes into a tank has shit they don't that can hurt them, and then it's a fight for everyone's life, and it's far more
Fun as old as rhyme.
yeah, it's not a new story, but it's told very well. And I think a lot of that is because of the pacing. It's an hour and 40, hits just a little over that sweet spot of 90 minutes and super entertaining. Like once it gets going, it just keeps going. It doesn't really slow down very much. The creature design is really cool. It's all practical effects, so even parts that you think, oh, that might be CGI, it's all done practically. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. You know, it's definitely worth seeing with a crowd as well, just because good monster movies can kind of make the experience a little bit more tense. So yeah, I had a good time with it. And the last one was Lover's Lane, which is an older film that just came out from Arrow.
With Anna Faris from '99, right?
Yeah. Sometimes, there's a blessing and a burden of having an abundance of movies to put on Blu-ray, which is that we're reaching that stage, that era that DVDs reached right before Blu-rays came out, which is we've put out all the things we could possibly put out that people actually want, Now we need to start putting out things that
Have we?
people aren't sure they want or that nobody wants, but we might need to sell to somebody because we bought it and it came with 10 other movies that we acquired. That's Lover's Lane. It's in actually in the interest of our top five. I wouldn't make my top five, but it is a slasher film that did not get a franchise. But that's because it was came out in like 1999, but it definitely feels like it was you know, they were watching. I know you did. We know what you did last summer while they were writing it. And
Yeah.
the baffling part is, I was watching some of the special features, and the writers claimed so much ignorance. They're like, "Oh, we just started writing it in 1997. Oh, you mean the year after Scream, or the year that I Know What You Did Last Summer came out? Oh, yeah, you
That's
had no
true.
idea that a hook killer with a with a fisherman's hat was going to interfere with your narrative. But it's kind of like I Know What You Did Last Summer meets My Bloody Valentine. So if those things if that interests you, it's not terrible. I'll tell you that much. It's certainly
I mean, that
entertaining.
sounds like a winning combination, but at the same time, I don't want to see the bad version of that.
Yeah, it's not even that it's bad. It's just it's so forgettable and so mediocre that it's like one of those things that you'll probably end up watching multiple times because you thought you saw you don't remember that you watched it, and then you're like halfway through you're like, shit, I have seen this. Then you're like, well, now I got to finish it, and then the cycle repeats every 5 years or something like that.
Amazing. I
Um,
saw the release info from Arrow when they announced it, and my first thought, which I'm thinking a lot these days, is still no Nightmare 4Ks.
it's true. It's I mean
But we
I
have Lover's Lane with posters and the Arrow treatment. Fuck.
yeah,
But
it's
hey,
it
you'll
doesn't
have
make
a good one.
sense. It doesn't make
No.
sense, but well, there is like I think what's fascinating about these movies is that if the value that is put into them, especially by companies like Arrow, is the special features because there's some really interesting backstory to some of these movies, like Lover's Lane is an example. Interestingly, because it released at such an odd time, they actually sold the VHS rights to Blockbuster that paid for the entire production budget, and then they held on to the DVD rights. So all these movies, like it's like was a pretty profitable movie, even though it didn't really have much of a. I mean, I'd never heard of it until Arrow put
Remember,
it out.
I remember seeing it at Blockbuster, but that's about it.
Yeah, now you know why, because Blockbuster had their skin in the game, so to speak. Um, and then I think another thing is it's not horror related, but John Wick 4. Everyone should go see John Wick 4. It's the most fun I've had at the movies in a very long time. It's just so much
I'll see
fun.
it. It's on the list. I actually saw. Speaking of non-horror movies for a second and adding things to your best of list, I saw Babylon a few weeks ago.
I want to see it. I need to set the time aside.
It's yeah, I mean it's 3 hours, but it flies. It's kind of awesome. I mean, I'm like, why was nobody? It's like people were barely talking about it, or people were shitting all over it when it came out, and I'm like, this is. It's not perfect, but I'm like, this is one of the best films of last year. Why did I not rush out to see this? I know because it's 3 hours, Ari Aster,
I know.
but
I was
both,
about to say I'm
yeah,
afraid of Bo because I know it's going to be Ari Aster masturbating on screen for 3 hours, and I just don't know if I want to see that.
I can't sit through another director's The Master. I can't do it. I can't, don't make me do it. But like in a movie theater at least. But I will absolutely rent it or watch it at home, which is probably not even how it's meant to be seen. But if this is, I don't need to sit through a grand 3 hour experiment.
Yeah.
Not like even I was so pumped for Grindhouse. No, no,
I did
not
see Grindhouse in theaters, although I was like
two
right before it
opening
left
weekend.
theaters. Um,
Yeah,
but that's because I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to ever have this kind of experience in a theater ever again. Like, and to this day, there has
yeah.
yet to be any sort of outstanding experiment in exploitation cinema since, which is we're going to put two totally different movies much like a grindhouse double bill, right next to each other with some amazingly
So
fake trailers that steal the show
yeah,
from both films.
I will say though, if they just flipped the movies and showed Death Proof first and Planet Terror second, we would be thinking about them a lot differently than we have.
Um,
Like that's the right way to go.
Tangentially, what are your thoughts on Death Proof?
It did not make this list.
Yeah,
um, I don't know. I mean, it's weird to call it his worst movie because I don't think he's
yeah.
made a
It's like
bad
saying the least
movie.
shiny diamond.
Yeah. It feels like the aristocrats. It's just like one long joke with like a punchline and then it ends. And that's great. I mean, there's great stuff in it. Um, but it's kind of the beginning of me realizing that he needs an editor. He needs like, and okay, Sally Mink, fantastic, but like you need, like Patton Oswalt says, you need someone to come in and be like, okay, honey, we're gonna make this a story, even if there really isn't much of a story there. And he needed a producer, and yet another reason to hate the fucking Weinsteins. They just let him do whatever he wanted, and that's great. But like, Tarantino needs to be reined in, I think, just a little bit. I think it's telling that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his best movie since The Kill Bills. In my opinion, Inglorious Bastards fans come at me, but yeah, just you can't just wind them up and set them loose.
Yeah, I
But
actually feel
great,
like
great
that.
performance.
Oh,
Great
for
Kurt
sure.
Russell.
Yeah. I mean, him eating the nachos in the bar is just peak Kurt Russell. But um, you raise a good point in relation to like it's kind of how A24 treats Ari Aster, which is like, oh, we're just gonna give him more time and more money and more stars to do this with. And I haven't seen Bo's Afraid yet, but I already have a bone to pick with it just because of its runtime and that I can't imagine that this movie needs to be 3 hours. Do you want it to be 3 hours? Like same with Martin Scorsese. He has that new Under the Killing Moon movie coming out. It's 3.5. It's 3 minutes shorter than The Irishman, and I can't help but think to myself, is this that artists really had all this story inside of them that they needed to get out, or is this more a relation? Is this a consequence of the streaming services behavior of like we need to make sure everyone's planted in a fucking seat for as long as fucking possible so that we have their attention then nothing else does. When in reality you actually don't get people's attention for the most of that runtime. What you get is people checking their phones 20 minutes into a movie because they're already bored and there's nothing to keep them societally from doing so. So anyway,
Prove us wrong, guys.
yeah.
Please prove us wrong.
I mean, and even John Wick at 3 hours was like a little long, but you know what? It's 3 hours of like it's like doing meth for 3 hours. It's like, okay, this is super fun. Time flies when
Just
you're
keep it
high.
going. Just keep
Yeah.
it going. Yeah.
Just keep smoking and I'll keep running. But anyway, I'm sure I will see Bo as Afraid and I'm sure I will have opinions on it. And I'm sure they will probably not they will be opinions. I don't know what they'll be because I'm not going to go out and say I even know what it's going to be about. I know generally, but anyway,
We'll
that's
get
all
there.
I've been watching. That's all I've been watching for now. But as we do and now is the time we're going to talk about some Macabre Daily stuff. So as we always say, Lowell and I are both contributors to a lovely site, macabredaily.com. Make sure to check us out.
Woohoo!
Whoop whoop. Want to comb through a little bit of news that's come out over the past few weeks. So Five Nights at Freddy's is coming out in Halloween. How are you feeling about Five Nights at Freddy's, Will?
I only know the Honest Game trailers that I've seen for Five Nights at Freddy's, and they were scary. But I feel like we did this already with Willy's Wonderland, so
Yep.
I don't quite understand the investment. But I'm curious.
I mean,
I'm
I feel like this
curious.
was in development before Willy's Wonderland. They just took so fucking long to make it that like, and Willy's Wonderland was not a good movie. Like, if you, why, I don't understand the choice to have Nicolas Cage not say anything. That's a very bad choice in my opinion.
Very weird.
But it wasn't a bad that's not what made like that's what made it a bad movie. Everything else about it was fine. But I guess having played the Five Nights at Freddy's games, I genuinely wonder how you're not gonna just repeat what's been done in even the Banana Splits movie. Like that was actually a pretty fun,
Mhm.
take on the very similar thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic for this, but I'm not holding out hope that it's going to be top and ending up on any sort of best of list.
Yeah, show us a trailer. We'll see.
Yeah. 824's Talk to Me invites you to play with the dead. Did you watch this trailer? I have not.
I did. It looks fine. I know the movie's getting insane hype, and it makes me curious, but it just kind of seems like a modern version of The Ring or Wish Upon, or I mean, I
Or
guess
a
not a
literal
modern.
monkey's paw, which is
Yeah,
basically what the story is.
yeah. I mean, it kind of is. I'm curious, but if it wasn't for the insanely positive reviews, it's not something I would necessarily run to seek out. But uh, I don't know. The
Yeah.
trailer doesn't look like we were saying before. It doesn't look quite like something new, but looks like something done before, well done. So I'm ready to see it and hopefully appreciate it.
I always get nervous when there's a lot of hype before something, like when only a handful of folks have seen something.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's like when Hereditary came out, and while Hereditary certainly lived up to the hype, um, it didn't live up to all the hype. When people are saying this is the scariest movie, whenever I hear the scariest movie ever made, I immediately can't help but eye roll and go
Oh yeah,
into like a small cardiac arrest because I'm like everything's scary if you're afraid of everything. Like what are we judging this metric on? But I hope it's good because I don't want a movie to be bad. So
more
talk
original
to me.
horror. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This I'm super excited about.
Right into
Maxine.
my veins. And you
Yeah,
know
I
what? You don't no don't even show me a trailer. I don't
no,
care.
I don't
Pearl
need
and
one.
are the trailers. We've seen two really good trailers so far. I'm happy to go into this blind.
Yeah, I have full confidence that Ty West will do a fantastic job closing out this trilogy. And
And by the way, at one point, Ty West said he was done with horror around the time of his last film, In the Valley of Violence, which was a Western. And he was like, if something interests me, I'll come back to it, but it's not something that I am really looking to do. But like, we are so glad to have him back. Holy shit.
I distinctly remember that he wasn't getting a lot of like he kind of went through the Eli Roth syndrome a little bit of horror, which is like he had really strong outings and then all of a sudden people just turned on him. And it's not to say the quality of the films changed. I think The Innkeepers was just kind of boring, you know.
That's
And
my
but the with the Sacrament was pretty good,
uh,
like
mhm.
a lot of fun, good hand in hand with Red State. Um,
Absolutely terrifying. The dread in the sacrament just
and the performances, he plays a really good Jim Jones kind of leader, whoever that actor was. But yeah, I have
yeah.
full confidence in Maxine, and I hope it comes out this year. But I have a feeling it probably won't come out till next year because A24's got a pretty stacked lineup this year, and this feels like a really good thing to defer to 2024 so you can come out in January with a bang. Um, and we were so spoiled with getting X and Pearl in the same year. That's the
Yeah.
ultimate hat trick right
I
there.
feel like people are still going to be talking about that years later. Like you see one film and then boom, here's a trailer for another one that we made at the same time, and it's as good, if not better. Like who does
That's
that?
the that see, I even thought when I don't know about you, but when I saw that trailer at the end of X, I was like, oh, that's a fun little thing he put together, kind of like the trailers in Grindhouse. But no, there was a
Mhm.
real movie there, and it came out like 4 or 5 months later. Um,
Yeah.
Absolutely astonishing. So
Mhm.
Maxine's it's got the Macabre Monthly stamp of approval, that's for sure.
Mhm.
This one looks interesting. Dracula hitting the high seas and the last voyage of the meter. Sounds like something your wife, might want to get
Yeah.
interested in as well, being a big Dracula fan.
Yeah, they played the trailer in front of Renfield.
How's it
It's
look?
like it. Have you seen? the trailer
No, I
yet?
haven't watched that. I try and stay away from trailers as much as possible. Not because I'm some,
Mhm.
I'm not better than anybody, but my expectations turn on me.
I get it. No, it looks like Alien on a boat, but instead of the future, it's the 1700s or 1800s, whenever it was, and looks interesting. They kind of keep the I want I want to call it the vampire because this iteration I just don't see as Dracula. I see him as like like one of the creatures from the Descent with wings. But I'm kind of curious exactly how they're going to do this because in the book it's barely mentioned and everyone on the ship died. So is are there going to be any surprises with this? I don't know, but love Andre Overdahl,
Yeah,
Overdahl.
Overall,
Um,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, I mean, so, and I know that this movie's been in development like forever. So glad it's finally coming, and yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this kind of like a more bat-like vampire.
Mhm.
But I also feel like, as you said, like there is very little exposition about what happens on the boat, which gives them a lot of room to play. And presumably, not that much time passes on this boat. I don't know. I don't exactly remember how much time it takes for him to get from A to B, but
Well, at least one person knows that it is Dracula on the
yeah.
boat. Like there's a line, we call him Dracula. So, but I'm sure they'll do some kind of spin on the mythology. It looks like the kind of movie I wish Neil Marshall was still making. Speaking
Huh.
of the Descent, but once again, a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. We could wax philosophic on Neil Marshall for quite some time and what could have been and what has been.
Yeah,
But yeah, between this and the Nosferatu film coming out, maybe Dracula's making a comeback in a big way. Who knows?
yeah.
And not the
Also,
2000 kind of comeback.
I mean, I can't believe that Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is still happening. I'm so glad it is, but I feel like it's a miracle. So, hell yeah.
Although, that this is a spicy opinion, but that might be the movie that runs his streak, that ends his streak. And that's not because I don't have confidence in it, but it's because Nosferatu there's not a bad version of that movie out there. Like, the 20s version, the FW Murnau version is iconic for it in its own way, but the Klaus Kinski version is as good. What was that? Was that Werner Herzog? As
Yeah.
good, if not in some ways better because it's updated and modern, but it's a beautiful looking film. And so, yeah, it's the cards are stacked against him. But then again, he hasn't made a bad movie yet. So
Honestly, some people will say, I mean, I'm sure some people have said that the Northmen broke the streak, but those people are idiots. That movie
those people are
rules.
wrong, and I hate them,
Yep.
all of them.
Yep.
The Northman was one of the best movies of last year, if not like easy top five, easy.
Yep.
And I need
Absolutely.
to, and it reminds me, I need to rewatch The Northman because I can't get enough of William Dafoe farting. So Lighthouse and Northman, here we come.
Hell yeah.
Um, The Boogeyman. So Stephen King's. Have you read this story? This is from.
I haven't, but my bringing it back to my wife again. She's read it and she loves it, and
Hmm.
she's like, "We're definitely seeing this. You should read the story." And I'm like, "I was not expecting that from you." So yeah, no, I haven't. I'm always cautiously optimistic about any Stephen King adaptation, but when it's one that's based on a short story, I'm kind of like, mm, well, you clearly saw something here, so you know what do you, what is it? Why does it deserve to be a feature length film? And since it's co-written by Beck and Woods, who did Haunt and Quiet Place at 65, and directed by the guy who did Host and Dashcam, I'm like, okay, it's got some good pedigree. It doesn't seem like it's just a cash in on the Stephen King license. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic as is par for the course for me. But I think the part that worries me most is about it having no reference to the original story is it gives off that, oh, the supernatural entity is just a metaphor for mental health vibes, and um I
We're
just
we're
don't know. Huh?
I think we've hit full saturation with that theme for the moment, unless you've got a new take on it. But that's
Yeah,
just my.
that's exactly what I was going for, which is that I just don't know if there's anything that's going to recreate that wheel. Even if the story's really good, once you're in the film medium, you're going to be compared to every single supernatural horror movie that's come out pretty much in the past 10 years, because almost all of them have some element of in being adjacency to mental health or some element of emotional abuse or something like that. It's not just a ghost story anymore. But you know, it's a big year for horror, and Boogeyman surely is probably going to rake in the cash, which brings us to the final Insidious film, The Red Door.
Is it
I have
though? Are we sure it's the
for
final
now.
chapter? Well, yeah, for now. Patrick Wilson's directorial debut. Um,
Yeah. Have you seen all the Insidious movies?
yes, but I only really remember the first and the fourth one that well. I remember I mean, I really liked the first one.
Yeah,
Um,
top
I
two.
remember and I can remember the first one, and I remember liking the others, but I don't remember much from them. And it's kind of like, James Wan's little universe. I mean, it's not like they're interconnecting films, but like it feels like it's he's really created a world, and I kind of appreciate that, because usually when you talk about universe creation, it's like, well, none of these people are in any real danger because there's like spin-offs and stuff to be made. Not with this. Um, and it actually makes me want to go back and watch two. But
Yeah.
uh, but
I
yeah,
think I need to watch these. Like I've only seen the first one, and I love the first one because it has to me what is one of the best scares, like top 10 scares in a horror movie is in Insidious. Um and but
the
because that
tiptoe
movie's
through the
so good,
tulips kid,
huh?
the tiptoe through the tulips kid.
No, it's the part where there's the pacing through the window, and then all of a sudden the person's inside.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it gets
Mhm.
me every time. But I think I just didn't want to ruin how much I liked the first one, so I just stayed away from the rest of them. But I think this is probably going to be the my wrong turn for this year, which is going to be I'm going to watch all of these
It
movies.
it will be a lot better than Wrong Turn. I mean, because I remember two is a direct sequel. Three is an immediate prequel to the first, and four is like an older prequel. So it's like you got a sequel and two prequels, and this is going to be another sequel.
Hmm.
And they all kind of stand on their own. But also, did you see the trailer for this?
No.
Okay, it kind of spoils the end of the second one, because these characters aren't really in three and four. It's sort of like 10 years after part two, and there was something about the end of the second one that happens that they reiterate in the trailer, where I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna stick. And this whole movie is about how it doesn't stick. So I'm like, okay, they knew that. Maybe they were waiting for them to age up a little bit. Cool, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it looks like I have till July 7th to catch myself up. So that
we'll
will
be
be my charge between now and then is to watch all the Insidious movies and still
you
keep my
know
sanity.
I've always said, like, when people told me there was going to be a Poltergeist remake, I was like, there's already a Poltergeist remake. It's called Insidious, and it's great.
Take that. And take that,
Yes.
Steven Spielberg. Give Toby
It's
Hooper his
James Wan.
flowers. And looks like we got a new Amityville documentary coming out. And we have a new writer on our staff, so go ahead and check her stuff out. But she reviewed this
Jamie
Amityville an origin
Gibson.
story. Um,
Mm.
I think the story about the Amityville horror house is far more interesting than the movies it created. Except, well, I
Yeah.
take that back. Far more interesting than the movies that came after the third movie, because the first three movies, they're the first one's a solid horror movie, but the second one and the third one, they just kind of exist as these what the fuck, um,
Yeah.
and they're actually
That,
really fun, but they're what the fuck.
uh,
Don't, don't let
Amityville
your stuff
2.
get to public domain, folks.
Jesus Christ.
And yeah, there's the Amityville
Um,
Karen, which is I
I think
won't be
there's
watching that.
Backpack 2 or something that just came out. I don't know. I kind of feel like when something I don't know. I don't feel like a lot of true crime horror is really exploitative. I'm sure more of it is than I realize. But whenever it comes to Amityville stuff, it feels like it's always exploitative. Like Amityville is just a name to throw on something.
It literally is. It's in public domain, which is why anyone can use it. So kind of like Night of Living Dead, anyone can release that on DVD if they want to. But um
Mm.
what
Yeah,
I
but there
will
were people in Night of the Living Dead. I
yeah,
don't know. It just feels if you like it, you like it. Good for you. I'm just
I'm here for the Steamboat Willie horror movies we're about to get when that license runs out because oh me, oh my, am I looking forward to some Steamboat Willie slashers. And I'm no one to talk about the Amityville because I shilled up like $10 for like the Amityville vibrator at a con 2 weeks ago because the person's like, well, you want to see some fucked up shit? I'm like, sure do. It's like, check this one out. So review coming maybe.
just gonna pass.
I'll send it to you when I'm finished with this. So you can you we so you know we can share in the suffering. But
My wife is from Suffolk County, Long Island. So if I open a box you sent me that's an Amityville vibrator, that's the end of so many things in my life. So
well,
many things. I
I'm
have
not here.
questions, but I don't want the answer.
Yeah, well, maybe those are questions you don't want to have the answers to. You can play the ignorance card on them, saying, "Oh, Matt sent me a weird box of stuff. I don't know what to do with it." But
You're not go to Ohio ever again.
oh, that's what happens with too much time and space. But yeah, there's some interesting news coming out from Macabre Daily. So we'll now move on to our topic, our list of the month, which is our top 5 slashers that are not franchise slashers. So you said this was difficult before. I would agree with you in that there's actually quite a lot of good slashers, but what I found myself most intrigued by was that when I was making my list, obviously there's a bit of generational bias. Like, I have a greater affinity towards the ones that I either grew up or was at a certain age watching, but I actually think that the 80s slasher movies are somewhat inferior to what we got in the 90s and the 2000s.
In terms of craft, definitely, but the ones in the '80s I find are much more watchable
Yeah,
for
there's
me, for the
it's
most part.
for the most part, but I'll be interested to hear kind of what's on your list because I think I'm gonna for I'm gonna guess at this point that we're gonna have probably one overlap at least, but no
At
more than
least,
three. No more than three. Because I'm pretty sure one that's on my list is going to be on your
yeah.
list because it should be on every single list that's talked about slashers that aren't that a slash movie that's not a franchise, but probably
And
should
I
have
feel like
been.
we've talked about it before. I mean, I don't know if it should have been a franchise because it does kind of stand alone beautifully, and you know, a little our friend, our well-known effects makeup guy had to go on to bigger and better things. So,
It's true.
but anyway, we yes, definitely that one. But you go first.
All right. I'm going to start with not the one I think we have in common, but one that I was actually surprised I put on this list, which was Valentine from 2001.
Oh, that was a runner-up,
I
almost.
fucking love that movie. Like, when it comes to a good slasher, it is everything that I want a slasher movie to be. And I don't think I would ever that's for me, I kind of surprised myself in that way because I don't love that era of slasher movies as much as I do. Like, I didn't think I did at least. But Valentine is kind of like what I want. If you're going to get a star-studded cast, I at least want you to murder them in glorious ways. And that's exactly what we get with Valentine, which is kind of like this slaughter high slash terror train premise, but make it sexy and make it look like it should be on the WB or the CW. But with the equal amounts of exploitative violence. So I really like it. And I go back to it more often than I do other slashers because of just how much fun it is to watch. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not trying to be, not trying to have a big And the thing slashers should never try and be bigger than their britches, and it certainly doesn't. It's not trying to, make us
Certainly
feel,
doesn't.
yeah, it's not trying to make us feel like bullying is a bad thing. Like, nope, we know that. But yeah, let's just see what happens when the wrong bully gets pushed the wrong direction, And I love it. I love Valentine.
I didn't like it when I first saw it. It's kind of grown on me over the years, not as much as it has on some people. I remember there was this thing online where people were pointing out that like it's like a very feminist horror film because all the men in it are awful to one degree or another. I would go even further and say every single character, men and women in this are just freaking terrible. Even Marley Shelton, the main character, Kate, is just an idiot.
Yeah.
She's an idiot. Like and the script kind of depends on that. And look, I love Jamie Blanks. I love Urban Legend. I'd love to see him make another horror movie. I'd love to see him do the requel for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I love The Mask. I love The Killer. But like, man, everyone in this just sucks.
I think that's what makes it so entertaining is that you don't care. Like, there's two ways you can watch a slasher movie. You care about the people that are dying so that you're invested in them as individuals, or you care about watching them die because you don't like them at all. And like, that's exactly where Valentine falls. Is like, I want all these people to die, and I'm so happy that they are. And I'm just happy that it's entertaining and that it doesn't, again, it knows exactly what it's doing. And it has some pretty iconic death scenes. That spa death scene is fucking great. It's just great.
And it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. Katherine Heigl also gets it right off the bat.
Yep.
It's kind of like the last slasher film of the 2000s. Like maybe there was one or two after that, but that was sort of like what began with Scream ended with Valentine.
And Urban Legend would have replaced Valentine if this was like, if franchises were allowed, because I do think Urban Legend is a superior film, but it also spawned two sequels. And it's also got the world's best premise for a horror movie. So, there's not a lot you can go wrong with there. But Valentine was my first pick, and if you haven't seen it, change that.
Yeah.
What's up for you?
Sticking to that era, I went with Cherry Falls, which I only saw. I mean, there's a Blu-ray of it, but I first saw it, I think, like many people, when it came on like USA Network, and it never occurred to me, even when I got out the Blu-ray, that we haven't seen the uncut version. They like cut away from like the kill scenes, or they show you parts of the aftermath. Like, it's not very gory, but it's like I've still enjoyed it. Like, after all this time, it's weird. I think not a lot of horror movies do that. When they're neutered, you can kind of tell. But yeah, just a great idea for a concept, for a killer. Michael Biehn as the sheriff, always great to see him. Brittany Murphy in a leading role. Gets a little, I mean, I feel like it's not actually shot in Canada, but it does feel very Canadian.
It feels kind of like a Heathers, like it has like some sort of spiritual connection to like the tone of Heathers in a way.
A little bit, yeah. And
it doesn't take itself super seriously in a Canadian way.
Yeah, and it's weird. Sometimes it explicitly tries to be a horror comedy, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's a little all over the place, but like, you will absolutely enjoy it. Yeah, Cherry Falls from 2000.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it. I own the Scream Factory disc that they put out. And I think I never saw it when it was on TV because I don't know why, but I just didn't. And I think the first time I watched it, it wasn't what I was expecting, because I think tonally it's all over the place. It's kind of weird and campy, but then it's a straight up horror movie, and then it's not. So I need to go back and watch it with fresh eyes. This is a good reminder to do just that.
Yeah, begging for a remake.
Like, really?
Would
that land on your list of movies to be remade, like top 5 movies that deserve a remake?
Yes, we should absolutely do that, and that would be on there. Let me just jot that down.
Who would direct
And
it? Just out of curiosity.
uh, an up and comer. I don't like unless it's like a Scream movie or like a Jewel and someone's franchise crown. If it's like a remake, go. You're never going to hear me say this again, but do what Platinum Dunes does and hire like someone who's never really made a movie before and is hungry to make their first film, but respects the genre. But
Fair.
the genre, Platinum Dunes. Swear to God,
Double underlined.
they call plat they're called Platinum Dunes because their movies are devoid of life. You can quote me on that. Nothing can grow out there.
I mean,
Anyway,
that's true. It's what Dark Castle built Platinum Dune shed on. Um, well, on to my next one. This is the only there's two movies I have in the 80s. This is one of them, and this is 1983's Curtains, which is Canadian as fuck. And is so much better and weirder than it has any business being. Like it's a slasher movie, but it's almost a giallo too, in the sense that it doesn't have some of those typical slasher elements of being overly supernatural, but it definitely is a slasher, and it definitely has one of the most like in the way that Ghostface kind of gets the shit beat out of him. The Killer in Curtains is pretty clumsy, to a point where they're almost kind of not scary, but it's really entertaining to watch them. And there's some obviously some fantastic scenes, like the scene on the ice, with that awful hag mask that the killer is wearing. But it also has one of the most fucked up endings, um, and just kind of general premises to begin with about this. And I forget the actor's name, but he played the dean in Animal House.
John Vernon.
Yeah, John
He's
Vernon
like
is
this.
basically
You recognize him as soon as you see him, even if you don't know his name. He's one of those.
Yep. He's just this real piece of shit actor professor who's taking advantage of young actresses, and yeah, leads them away. Like the whole movie opens up with him leaving uh a woman he's seeing at a mental hospital to prepare for a role, and he just leaves her there. Like just straight up
Yeah,
leaves her there and goes hangs out with other younger actresses. So usually the twist in slash movies is kind of, I don't want to say unsurprising, but they're almost very expected that it's going to be kind of Scooby-Doo-esque. But the ending of Curtains is wildly different than that. It kind of flips a lot of things on its head, and both in a sad way, but also in a really interesting way. It again, not trying to spoil anything, but it's just a really good um, turn of the page, if you will, on how to end a slasher movie and make it kind of strange to begin with. So Curtains is my fourth pick on this one.
cool. I saw it a long time ago, and I tried to watch it. I think a few months ago, and I forget what streaming service I saw it on, but the transfer wasn't great. But I feel like maybe most horror movies, most slasher movies from that era, unless it was a major studio, don't have that great of a transfer. Like I watched Graduation Day, and it was like there's so much light in the background, like it feels overexposed. Prom Night too is
Yeah.
another one, the original.
Now I
But
think
yeah,
there's a Synapse disc, I think, that of the Curtains, which it's pretty good. But it definitely has some of that grainy oversaturation. But that's, I think, a byproduct of the era, and I don't think it got the world's best cleanup job. But it does look quite good. It's better than one would expect.
cool. My next one is the cousin to the one that we probably share, and it is a film that if Chat GPT wrote a horror movie, wrote a slasher movie, it would be Madman from 1980, 81. Has inexplicably a 4K release from Vinegar Syndrome. I don't know what there is to upres in this movie, but it is just a hostess cake of a slasher film. It's I don't know if there's an actual performance in it. It feels like
No.
everyone's just reading off cue cards, and that's fine. It is charming. You will mistake all of the characters for other characters who have similar hair. There are characters who die who don't say a word, even though they show up and they appear like they, you know, they're a part of the camp that's out in the woods, and we're supposed to know who they are, but we don't, and then they die. Um, just God, like scenes filmed at night that you can tell were filmed like as the sun was going down,
Night for
and
day, gotta love
a,
it.
a full-on soft rock music video in a hot tub in the middle of it. It is not a good movie, but god damn it, it is a really entertaining movie. Um, yeah, and never
And
got
it's
a
got a
sequel.
great like catchy song, you know, the Madman Mars song.
I look, I love that song. We all love that song, but I could also get stoned and hit buttons on a synthesizer to make
Yeah.
that theme song.
Now, I think Madman shares a lot in common with The Mutilator in that it's not a good movie, but it's a really entertaining one.
Yeah,
And the same
yeah.
acting school, the Mutilator School of Acting is pervasive across movies like Madman or Slaughterhouse. You know, it's another one that's got equally bad. One that didn't make this list, but I considered it was Just Before Dawn, which is much better made than those two movies, but is very similar in its kind of foresty guy taking people down premise.
Jeff Lieberman, baby.
Yep. Well, I will. Madman's not on my list, but that's a good one that I need to go back and see because it's been a while.
Oh,
The next
good
one on
one.
my list,
But yeah, no, it's see Matt. See Matt.
I'm not putting it at the top of the list to watch necessarily, but it's going in the pile. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
for sure.
The next one brings us into for me at least, the 90s. I'm holding off to the one I think we have in common at the end because I'm pretty sure it's going to be, I just think like I know what it is already, but I'm going to the 90s again, which is Dr. Giggles. I watched this movie so fucking many times when I was younger and even that I haven't picked up the new Scream Factory release because I have a German media book that's region free, so I don't see much of a reason to double dip on that one because I suspect that Scream Factory didn't do that much to it. But nonetheless, this is a great fucking movie. Larry Drake is just absolutely batshit insane, and you know he's there. This was one that I think deserved a franchise because I would love to watch Larry Drake as Dr. Giggles and that weird laugh. Just think of really weird medical ways to kill people. I mean, we got two dentist movies with Corbin Burnson. Why couldn't we get Larry Drake for at least one more Dr. Giggles? Dr.
I can't
Giggles,
watch dentist movies. I don't know teeth trauma. I just can't. I don't know how the editors got through that, but that's just me. But you bring up something. Well, sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
no. I mean, it's like Dr. Giggles is a it's just a short, sweet. It knows exactly what it is. It's like 80 something minutes. It gets in, it gets out. It opens with a bang. It ends with a bang. It's super gory. It's kind of the peak, as far as I'm concerned, absurdity of slashers post like 80s, entering in the 90s, where they started to take a small hiatus before Scream, where we're getting this kind of okay, we don't know what else to do. So let's just ensure that we have really stupid characters and a really interesting antagonist and then just let the blood fly. And that's exactly what this movie is. There's like a haunted house that they're in, that he's like living in.
Doug,
It's just a
Doug
strange
shows
movie.
up.
Yeah, I mean, come on, what else? It's not Cool Runnings, but I'll take it. What were you saying though before about
I was saying that people don't really talk about this era that much, but there's sort of pre Scream 90s horror movies. I know we don't want to admit that that really exists, except for like Silence of the Lambs and Candyman, but there's this sliver of time where the 80s were over, but like you're still trying to capture the magic of the 80s and you're making these movies. There's got to be a proper name for them somewhere. They're all set in a small town with stock characters, some kind of boogeyman, gross set pieces. Some of them went direct to video, like Leprechaun, Warlock 2, Hellraiser 3 is set in the city, but perfect example of a franchise that doesn't know it's dead at the time. Dr. Giggles is definitely one of them sleepwalkers. It's this weird time before horror caught up with the 90s. And someone needs to make a documentary
It's
on it.
like
But Dr.
it's like the
Giggles,
last hurrah.
yeah, yeah, but it's like it's not even like it's not even the last hurrah. It's the morning after the last hurrah when they're trying to keep the party going, and they're already so drunk that they can't bounce the quarters into the shot glasses, so they're just drinking empty shot glasses. That's what these movies really are. But they're Children of the Corn 2 and 3. I can keep going, but like
Yeah, Lord of Illusions. I mean, Nightbreed was 1990, so big
yeah,
Clive Barker stuff there. But there is this like, well, it's because I think the practical effects got so like they reached the peak of what they were trying to achieve through the 80s. Like all the innovation that occurred in the 80s, now in the 90s, like, oh, it's kind of like now with CGI. It's like, what more can we possibly do with it? To make it any more realistic at this point. It's like that's where practical effects was. And so you get these really amazing looking films that aren't always great. Like they're not, you know, going to win any awards per se, but they're really solid horror movies. And I think Dr. Giggles certainly fits. Yeah, and they're memorable. Like there's just something about them that a lot of that might have been the VHS era as well, of just like seeing them in the video. Like these were the things that dominated the video store shelves. I mean, hell, I like full movies for the same reason. It's because like
oh yeah,
Puppet Master and Subspecies and Demonic Toys, all that shit. Like it's
oh
just
my,
there's something about there's something in Arcade, which I will die on the hill that movie's supremely underrated, and people should see
IP
it.
Albert. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and R.I.P. Albert Pune, who got snubbed at the fucking Oscars, but I know they don't show everyone who died, but they should have
That's
fucking
to
showed
be
Albert
expected.
Pune.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr. Giggles, it's my third one.
Well, mine is exactly what you think it is. It's Pieces, because that's the tagline.
Ah,
Which I
I
was
have
thinking,
pieces on my runners up.
I don't know, like I guess it's technically a giallo, but like
It's a
not really.
slasher.
Yeah, you can go either way. I'm like, I guess if you full on call it a giallo, you got to admit it's a really shitty giallo, but it's a great slasher. Also, a little too bright. Kind of feels like something's wrong with the film, but maybe that's just the effect of seeing it in a grindhouse theater that they want you to feel. This movie is gross and delightful. Um, and bastard, what can I say? Just wow. If you're doing a history on slashers, you have to see Pieces. I think it's Eli Roth's favorite horror movie, or one of his favorite horror movies, and you can kind of tell. I don't even know who directed it because there's someone who's credited, but it's like a stage name for like a Puerto Rican director. So it's sort of like a foreign of the way like Puerto Rico or even
I think
Italy.
he's from Spain.
From. It's a commentary on like America made by a foreign crew with kung fu for some reason. It's ridiculous, but it's got the gore to back it up, and it is a blast.
And it's got some of the best armchair psychology that's ever existed in horror film. Like just the Freudian connections that are made at the beginning that are loosely tied up at the end are just exactly the kind of, you know, sub community college level psychology you want in your horror, which is the most base levels of, oh, well, if you're a pervert, then you're a pervert forever. And now you're going to kill people.
There
But
you
yeah,
go.
Pieces was on my list. I did cross it off. So like, you know what? This was hard because of that. There's so many interesting slasher movies. Like and yeah, I second Pieces as being, even though it did make my list, it's an absolutely outstanding addition. My final one or my last one in the 90s is Popcorn from 1991, which is still.
That was my next one.
Is it really?
We're gonna have two overlap.
Oh, well, yeah, Popcorn is so much fun. It's so good.
I mean, honestly, if Valentine is like the end of the Scream era, I would go so far as to say Popcorn is the end of the 80s slasher movie.
Yeah.
Like the last, like, good, like, really memorable slasher film in that cycle. Like, it came out in 91, but it's 80s all the way. Come on.
And it's such a strange movie because there's so many choices that you just don't really question, but don't make sense. Like, they don't make sense. Like, why is the theme song this kind of like somewhat Jamaican? And I think it was filmed in Jamaica.
No, it was. It was filmed in Jamaica, and knowing that before you watch it just makes it so much more
It's like
enjoyable.
Saturday
It's
night at the
movie,
movies.
and like that's non-diegetic music. That's just like music for when they're. That's the montage for putting together the theater. You don't need to use Jamaican music for that, but it's good. It's good reggae, and there's they stop the movie pretty much for a reggae concert on stage. It's
Yeah,
like they didn't do any of these things, but they did, and it's great.
it's peak cinema really, and it's the kind of thing where like you're watching this, you're like, someone made this intentionally. Like someone's made an intentional decision to put this fucking musical interlude in between that has no, like, that would never happen, and then the music they play is the same music you've been hearing ad nauseum up to this point. So you're almost like, is this a nightmare? Like, is this some sort of lucid dream? But it is kind of like, it reminds me a lot of the Michelle Soavi film, like I think it was a couple years before that, Stage Fright. And like it's got a lot of commonalities as far as the setup and the premise. But I think this is far more entertaining because you have this like fade to black element in there as well, where the killer is kind of taking on the persona of other people, and it is quite goopy.
Yeah, doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you really think about it, but great idea.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't make any sense, especially when you see what he looks like underneath the mask. You're like, really? And there's a lot of red herrings with like a cult going on. So it's there's a lot in that movie, but what matters is the journey, not the destination. And the journey is so much fun.
Yes, which leads us to number one, which you
The
do.
Prowler, right? I'm just kidding. It's The Burning. But The Prowler would be a good one, but The Burning.
I thought about it, but it's a runner-up along with Freaky, which I don't know if we're going to get a sequel, and it is relatively new, but it's not a franchise. But yeah, The Burning. I mean, come on. It's like
There really is no better slash. It might be. I'm gonna take out Halloween from this possibly hyperbolic statement, but I think it's the best slasher movie ever made. Like, taking out Halloween, because it's got
they're
everything.
I'm going to throw a flag. I believe an argument can be made, but there are Friday the 13th films better than this. And when there are Friday the 13th films better than a slasher film, you know that it's top five or top 10. Top five or
What
top
Friday the
10.
13th movie is better than The Prowler?
Two,
Because it
four,
pretty
and
much
six
is.
are the best ones.
All right. Well, six is totally wildly different than The Burning. Like, six is like a horror comedy.
I mean,
Four,
people talk the same way as they do in The Burning. It's all, it's we're in the middle of the woods, but we're still somehow like on Long Island, like every New York theater actor just hamming it up.
yeah. I mean, they pretty much just left the street, the sleepaway camp auditions. They're like, oh, over to The Burning. Um, but eat shit and die, Bill. But yeah, like there are eat shit and live. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason why I like The Burning is it's so endlessly rewatchable. Like, you can always come back to it. The scenes that still hit, like the kayak scene. It's
Oh,
one of the best set pieces in horror, and there's genuine. It's one of the few times where a killer exposes themselves to a group of people, and the reactions are exactly what you would think would happen. Like, it's like, oh, people legitimately freak the fuck out. There's an authenticity to a lot of the movie, namely some of the misogyny and sexism, but also the reactions and the ways in which people try and solve what's going on. There's a lot of logic to it, which is not common in a slasher movie. It's like, oh, this is how people probably would try and figure this situation out. And in
yeah, the
kind, they're
characters aren't idiots. They're kind of buffoons, but they're not stupid
yeah,
for the most.
there's a tenderness to that, because now you're kind of rooting for them. Even the people you don't like, you're like, I really don't want that person to die. They're kind of a shit, but I don't want them to die. Um, so it makes the weight of their deaths much more meaningful. And it has one of the best openings for a horror movie, and a great origin story. Um, Still don't fully understand, like, the, I don't know how kids wouldn't realize this is a really bad idea to, play with fire in this kind of way, but hey, what do I know?
And none of them are in jail.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
that's
I
a
mean,
nothing to see
yeah,
here thing.
just some nice white kids in the woods. Move along. It's
Yep,
fine.
just setting the grounds person on fire, no big deal.
Oh, your dad's a state senator? Oh, yeah, the congressman. We're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just gonna bring that pedophile cook from Sleepaway Camp over here. Now we've got a quorum. But yeah,
I'll call
yeah.
them little baldies. And then he's like,
Uh, imagine writing that line like and like you're in the room, probably ripped on cocaine, and just like, yep, that's what we're gonna do.
I always thought Sleepaway Camp deserved the disaster artist treatment. Like, make a movie about the making of that movie, because even the story behind it is completely insane. But
There is a
yeah,
Felissa Rose and the cast of Sleepaway Camp are going to be at this Cinema Wasteland event this September, and they're going to do a watch along with the movie, and I'm so excited just to be in the presence of people talking about this movie, which is not a good movie, but it has some of the most memorable scenes in horror. If we were talking
yeah,
about top franchise slashers, Sleepaway Camp might end up on that list. Might,
yeah.
might. Well, got our top five. Is there any on here that we didn't talk about? You're like, this one absolutely deserves some flowers.
I don't know. I mean, my runner-up was Valentine. My second runner-up was Freaky. We touched on them. I think we're good. I think we
Yeah, I
did it.
think the only ones on me that I didn't include here was Slaughter High, which still a lot of fun, still pretty nasty, very stupid, like just
Really.
but the kills are good. And then the New York Ripper, which is some, you could call it a giallo, but I think it has more in common with the slash movie than it does a giallo. And just because Lucio Fulci made it doesn't mean it's a giallo. It's definitely a slasher movie, even down to the Donald Duck voice. So I'll take it. But with that, before we end, given that we're recording this on the 19th of April, that means that tomorrow is the 20th of April, the international day when people celebrate smoking weed. So we thought, what better way to
Really?
commemorate
Before
this?
you told me you were celebrating Hitler's birthday, I thought that was kind of odd, but
Hey, get me off
it really
stage,
is
Jerry.
different.
Play me off. But yeah, I thought, why don't we just share a couple, like one or two films that, you know, would be really great to watch on 420 or that have a lot to do with weed. I don't know what you came up with, but my first one's Idle Hands, which is just deserves to be. It is. It's marijuana in its DNA.
Yeah, I did think of that for sure. You could also start the fog at midnight. So it starts on April 21st, which is Fog Day, because that's the anniversary of the ship crashing. Um, but I have two
Okay.
that I came up with. Friday the 13th, Part 5, because you can just shut your brain off and enjoy some. It's a calzone, man. It's just cheese
Or is
all
it an
the way.
enchilada?
I Damn enchiladas. No, because an enchilada has like spice and flavor. This one is like like, can you name a slasher film where more there it's like there are more bodies than characters? It's ridiculous. It's like they're just pulling people out of their butts to have a body count, and that's fine.
Yeah,
It's just,
it works.
yep, just it won't actually scare you, but you'll be like, that idiot got his head chopped off on the motorcycle.
His name's
Also,
Roy. All right.
R.I.P. Ethel, the actress
Yeah.
Carol Loken, passed away. That sucked because she is clearly one of the best parts of this movie,
Yep.
having the time of her life. And the other one I would watch is Basket Case, which, man, this movie, if you ever want to be greened out and every once in a while sit up in your chair and go, "What the hell is this?" Basket case. Gotta
Basket
have some.
case walked so Malignant could run. There is and Belial is easily one of the best names for that character. Yeah,
Mhm.
I could agree. Full stop with those. I have one other one, and I only saw this recently, but Leprechaun 3. This movie is
Oh,
so
Leprechaun
fucking
3.
insane. It has got some of
I,
the best and worst lines of all time.
Leprechaun 3 is the best Leprechaun. Like if you've never seen, and once again with my wife, I really should have done this. She's like, why don't you own any of the Leprechaun movies? They must be really bad, right? I'm like, because it was St. Patty's Day and she's Irish, and I'm like, okay, let's watch the first one. But I really should have shown her the third one
Yep.
because if you're going to show someone a Leprechaun movie and you don't think they're ever going to see any other ever again, show them the third one because the third one is just as good and as leprechaun-y as it gets. But
It's
yes,
clear that everyone on that set was either drunk or high while they were making it and writing it, and every part of it. Warwick Davis is having an absolute blast, and I was a bit spoiled that my first time seeing it was during this Joe Bob watch along that he does for Patreon. So we get like Joe Bob commentary occasionally, chiming in while the movie's going on. And you've got Caroline Williamson in there, who she makes an appearance here and there in a horror film. But
she's in Renfield. She's
is
in
she
Renfield.
really?
She's in Renfield for a scene, but I was like, is that Caroline Williams?
Did the whole like, is that you?
Caroline, oh my god, yeah. And then she isn't in the rest of the movie, but it's like, she's in Renfield. So yeah,
That's another
she's.
reason to see it. But I mean, Leprechaun 3 is the kind of movie you get you roll a really nice blunt, get a group of three people to do a rotation with, and just let it rip. Because you will cry because you're laughing so hard. You will not be scared, and you'll keep thinking to yourself, why is all this happening? What's the point of it all? Does it even matter? Why am I here? You'll start asking questions you don't have answers to, and you might get a little scared, but then you'll come back to Leprechaun and you'll be like, it's all okay now. It's all okay.
There's a fan theory that each Leprechaun movie is about a different Leprechaun. Like Warwick Davis plays all, but it's actually a different Leprechaun in each movie, and I kind of like that, and it
Yeah,
does kind of make sense.
I actually kind of I actually like that as a premise in general of like, let's just keep making Leprechaun movies, but a different Leprechaun every time. And they have their
Yeah,
own, like this one has to shine shoes. That's their weakness. This one has to, you know, I don't know,
this one
make
hates
one of those
iron.
friendship bracelets or something like that. They have to
This
like
one wants
tie.
to be a rapper.
Yeah. I mean, and I haven't watched Leprechaun in the Hood, either one or two in some time, but um,
they're. I don't know. I mean, there's you hope that they're so bad they're good, but nah.
it's the one
I
liners that you stick
all
around
in a one.
for.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Friend, what is it? A friend with weed is a friend indeed. That's
That's
the
true.
famous line. But yeah, maybe next year we'll get our shit together and do a full on top five of movies to get absolutely ripped to on 420 and watch. But for now,
Also, horror icon dream blunt rotation or nightmare blunt rotation. Uh,
you know what?
put it on.
I like this. Right? Let's hold on. Dream and Nightmare Blunt.
I already wrote it down.
Okay, you've got it. Then as long as it's immortalized in some sort of artifact, then we're good to go. But um, I think that'll be this month's Macabre Monthly. We had some fun, we had some laughs, we watched some movies, saw some slashers. If you have any ones that you thought we should have mentioned and we didn't, and you feel real strongly about, drop it in the comments somewhere. And yeah, from not sunny Ohio, adios.
Sunny Florida.
Hey, be good,
Hey,
stay safe, and watch some horror movies.
what he said.
Woo.
Later.